Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Joanna. Let's get started. Hello everyone, welcome back to Work in Progress, where we chat all things personal productivity and give you guys the tools you need to help enhance your well-being. So for today's topic, we are going to be talking about nutrition, and I feel like nutrition is one of those topics where you can't really get enough information. You Google things, you get people's opinions, you talk to experts, but I feel like it's something you can always keep learning about, which I definitely do. So today we're going to focus on how we can optimize our nutrition in the workplace for peak productivity. And today I'm really happy to say that I'll be joined by Bonni Wildesen Hise. She is the founder of Wild Free Health. She's also a degreed and certified holistic health practitioner and nutritionist. So we're in very safe hands today. Hi Bonni, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Before we dive into today, would you like to tell us a bit more about the work you do and who you are?
Sure. I work as a holistic nutritionist and an herbalist. I have degrees in complementary alternative medicine. So I'm educated as a holistic health practitioner, but I tend to geek out over food and the chemistry of food, how it interacts with our bodies as we eat it and consume it and do all the things we're supposed to do with it.
Amazing. And what made you find yourself in this field of work?
I have been in this field for 20 years. I actually started out just a regular fitness trainer, and I know that sounds funky, but I was one of the million helping people lose weight after I lost 100 pounds myself. And over the years, the universe kept sending me clients who were fighting autoimmune dysfunctions and food sensitivities in areas that I didn't understand and really couldn't help them. And I noticed they weren't getting the help that they needed either. So I went back to school and shifted into where I'm at today.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And it seems like you were really inspired by the people you worked with.
I really was. And just before getting my degree, actually, I ended up coming down with very similar symptoms. So I had a little minor version of what my clients have gone through.
Yeah. And can you tell me a bit about what the sort of, message behind Wild Free Health is? What are you guys focusing on?
We focus on helping women heal their gut so that they can overcome and manage autoimmune conditions and chronic health issues, chronic illnesses specifically. A number of illnesses and pretty much every autoimmune dysfunction or illness out there stems from the gut. You're going to have to manage your gut forever. And that is the number one place where reactions and episodes stem from. And science has found, even myself over the years working with my clients, have found that when we focus on managing the gut more effectively and efficiently, it actually makes life just so much easier. So we love to say that our purpose and our mission is to help women live wild, free, and healthy for however long they're on this earth.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I feel like gut health is something we don't really talk about, and it's a bit underrated at the moment.
I agree. It's getting out there more and more, though, and I'm really hoping it's not a fad because it is so crucial to our health.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping today we can integrate some more conversation about that and help, propel those kinds of conversations in society.
I like that thought. I like that idea.
Great. Well, we have a little section we call Have You Met Bonni? So here we just get to know you a bit before we get into all the serious talk for today. So, my first question for you is, do you have a favorite book, or are you someone who reads a lot of books?
I have favorite authors. Let
Oh,
me say
okay.
my favorite book of all time was Odd Thomas and the entire Odd Thomas series. I'm a huge fan of Dean Koontz. I'm a huge fan of Stephen King. I prefer the books, not the movies. I have watched the movies. I'm still a huge fan of the books.
Yeah. Stephen King's a really interesting one. I have not read the books, unfortunately, but I have watched the movies. So I don't feel like I have enough information to be like if the books or the movies are better. But do you think the movies are just a lot like worse than the books?
Not at all. I actually think most of them are dramatizations. The older ones are now just kind of cult classics. You know, they're those really bad movies that at the time were great, but today it's just a cult classic.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Is It by Stephen King? Is that one by him?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes,
have you read that one?
I have not. I started reading that one and had to put it down, and it still follows me from house to house to house. And I've had
Oh.
that book for years, and I can't get past the first couple of chapters.
Is that for like a particular reason?
My imagination runs away with me. It's kind of funny that I like the paranormal, the mystery, and all the suspense books because those are the things that'll keep me up at night. If I
Oh.
read something too close to bedtime, it'll keep me up all night. And I've set my own story on my own timeline, and it can get pretty dramatic and crazy.
That's really cool. I love that actually. I love when people have their like own little niches when it comes to reading. It's so fun. Great. Well, my next one for you is movies. Do you have a favorite movie or anything you've recently watched that you've enjoyed?
Um, Movies and I don't tend to get along well. I would say my favorite is The Grinch and
Oh.
the original Grinch. I have ADHD and I'm very hyperactive, so sitting through a movie is a lot for me.
Yeah, no, I feel like yeah, having the attention span to sit through a movie can be very difficult. And there's like a lot of 3-hour movies coming out recently. And I'm like, I don't know how anyone sits through that without like moving around or anything.
Yeah, I can't do it. My husband won't come and he won't go and see movies with me anymore, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all.
That's so fair. But the Grinch, that's an interesting choice. Is that because of Christmas and you like the holidays or
I like the message. You know, you think he's such a bad guy, but then in the end, really all it is he wants the holiday to be about the people and the love, not the possessions, not the gift.
oh, I've
So
actually never watched The Grinch, so thank you for telling me that. I didn't actually
yeah,
know that that was the moral behind it. I would have just been like, The Grinch, bad guy, bad person.
yeah, yeah, that's how it starts. And Dr. Seuss did an amazing job of really transitioning that. And as a kid, I didn't realize that's what it was. But when you grow up, you really get that message loud and clear.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Got a couple more here. So, next one is, do you listen to podcasts at all?
I do. I listen to podcasts all the time.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
My favorite is Chalene Johnson, actually.
Oh, never heard of that one. What's that one?
So she is she's a former fitness trainer, um, and she's a business owner. She's been in business and running her own businesses since she was a teenager. And her podcast, she mixes a whole bunch of different things, not just the business expertise, but she talks about her personal life. She talks about finances. She talks about struggles with her family, with her own health, her hair. She cut her hair this year and did a whole episode about it. And it was hilarious. You would think, it's just superficial, but it, it, she makes me laugh because a lot of the things that she says, I've been thinking.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think somebody in a celebrity caliber where she's at would cut her own hair or would even consider that, and the journey that she went down and the stories that she told just based on something like that. She talks about lashes. She talks about how you could go from high intensity interval training. I think this is the latest one. You go from high intensity interval training to zone 2 training when you're going through menopause. And a lot of women have found success in that. And, I think it's 2 or 3 podcast episodes on that alone. And so it's just interesting. Every episode's different from the last. And I think that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I think that's what's really great about podcasts. Like, you relate to people you never think you're going to relate to, or like someone else is thinking the same thing as you and you never thought that someone would think that. Or especially, like you said, like a celebrity would do something like that or think something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, super interesting. Great. Well, I've got one last question for you, which is, do you have a famous role model? Or I like to step away from the word famous sometimes, so I guess even just someone in your life that you look up to.
I would say my Aunt Maggie. We lost her in 2007 to breast cancer, but she was always the family rock. She was always the one that let everybody be the person that they are. She met everybody where they were. She didn't set expectations. She didn't have judgments on anybody in this world. And to live a life where you don't look at somebody else and have your own personal identity attached to that, or your own personal opinions attached to them. You're just, this is who they are, and that's it. It's that simple. So I strive to live my life the way that she always did.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I feel like it's so hard to come across people these days where they don't judge you, or like it's hard to just not judge people. I feel like we're so wired to do that automatically when we see someone and we don't even know them. So that's such a really rare and beautiful quality to have.
Yeah. It's one of the
Great.
things I admire most about her.
Yeah, definitely a quality that you don't see much. So it's a
Mm-mm.
very good one to have.
I agree.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think we're ready to get into the nitty gritty of today. So, my first question to start things off for you is, what is stress busting nutrition?
So stress busting nutrition is effectively eating so that you're managing your stress levels and you're helping your body to respond in a healthy way to stress by feeding it well, by putting the nutrients and the nourishment inside your body that is going to be optimal for it, that's going to let it run effectively, efficiently, so that not only your stress system, your parasympathetic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, your circulatory system, gut, everything can operate in a way that it's able to really lower those stress levels and help you sustain a healthier balance within your mood, within your emotions. And when you feed your body well, that's entirely possible. So stress busting nutrition is really just about feeding your body well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't really come across the term stress busting nutrition until, I looked into this for today. And often when you think of like stress, you think of it as like external factors and like not really as something you have control over. So like when I think of stress, I'm like, okay, if they stop doing that, then I'm going to be less stressed kind of thing.
That's how a lot of us look at it, is it's always something external impacting us, when in reality, we have a lot more control over how we respond to stress and how our body innately responds to stress than many in today's society actually realize.
Mm. Yeah, and you never really think of stress as something you kind of have control over. Like you can do this, this, and this to help reduce like your stress.
Very true. There's a lot of people that would say that And they call me out all the time, especially on TikTok and on IG. I get a lot of flack back when I make comments about looking at your food as ingredients.
Mm.
When you're looking at stress busting nutrition, you want the ingredients into your body that are going to help it manage and sustain a healthier stress balance. Because stress is going to hit us no matter what we do, especially in today's society. It's
Yeah.
inevitable. But that doesn't mean you go into fight or flight. It just means your body has to respond in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess when we're thinking about, stress and nutrition, how does that impact the workplace and like what we bring into our work environment?
Usually, when I answer this question, I go with the example and the analogy of a car. So bear with me for just a second.
Yeah.
Old cars, when you treat them poorly, they become sluggish. They start running down the road, chugging. They make a lot of noise. They're not efficient. They can't keep up with traffic. And they really can't do much but get you from A to B. And it's going to take you 3 times as long, maybe 10 times as long, depending on how beat up the car is. When you're stressed and you aren't managing it, you're not trying to do anything to really restore that balance and to maintain that homeostasis within your system, you're going to mimic that car. It's going to take you a very long time to get through a project where somebody else, exact same person, duplicate yourself, clone yourself, except feed yourself whole foods.
Mm.
And now what you got is, instead of being that old chugger putting down the road, now you're a sports car zooming down and you're there lickety split.
Yeah.
You have to
Interesting.
run everything on good, solid fuel, good, solid upkeep and maintenance. Otherwise, you don't get anywhere.
Yeah. And I guess that's all a part of understanding our stress, understanding like how our bodies work and how it responds to different kinds of nutrition. So, how do you think that, understanding and implementing kind of stress busting nutrition is beneficial for maintaining our well-being?
I think it's crucial for just about every area of our life. If you ever notice when you start to feel sick or your allergies are bothering you, which happens a lot here in the States, especially in the spring and the fall, or it's coming into winter, so we're in cold and flu season right now. So we're always fighting something. You're always going to run into something. Your brain tends to get a little foggy. When you're stressed, your body can only operate so much. It can only turn on so many faucets.
Mm.
And when you turn on the stress faucet, the immune faucet gets turned off. And when
Yeah.
that immune faucet gets turned off, you're now open and susceptible to other things. But your brain is hyper focused on managing the stress that you aren't helping it manage by feeding it well.
Yeah. And I do notice like when, for example, I get stressed, I like totally forget to eat. And then you think by not giving yourself time to eat, you're giving yourself time to do other things and get other things done. And therefore you are being more productive. But I guess like that sort of scale becomes imbalanced.
Yeah. And that's really the key with stress and stress busting nutrition and productivity, is to be your optimal self, to be as productive as you are capable of. You want to feed yourself well because you want to maintain that balance. You
Yeah.
have to sustain this. It can't fluctuate, because a
Yeah.
rocket boat doesn't go anywhere. It just rocks.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we might think we're being productive by getting all these things done, but we might not actually be getting anywhere.
Exactly. There's a scientific study. I think there's many of them, but there's one I saw recently that talks about how, depending on what you fed your body, it can determine whether you are actually paying attention after 20 minutes or if you stop paying attention after 45 or an hour.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess yeah, when you do think about it, when sometimes I attribute my attention span to whether or not I've been doing a bunch of healthy things for myself, whether I've been taking care of myself when I feel like I'm really out of it and like I'm getting a lot of things done, but I don't feel like I'm in that space to be doing them as well as I could be. I guess I can look at everything going on around me and I can be like, oh, I haven't been eating as well as I should have been, or I've been substituting like good nutritional meals for like quick ones that, allow me to have more time.
Yes, that is an insight that a lot of people are missing. So when they're working and they think, I have to get this deadline, I have to meet this deadline, I don't have time for a break, I don't have time to eat, which how many of us have either said that or heard that in the last couple of days?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of the nature to say it. And in reality, our brains need fuel. We can't operate on empty.
Yeah. And would you be able to share some examples of stress busting nutrition or like what that kind of looks like?
Absolutely. It's very similar to eating a plant-based diet, not 100% plant-based, but more 80%. A lot of the animal products, especially meats and shellfish and fish in general, those are going to give you complete proteins. And complete proteins fit all the little puzzle pieces in your gut, your intestine, and within your body to provide your body the amino acids it needs to produce energy. So you need some whole proteins, whether it comes from animal protein or vegan sources. And then you definitely need the micronutrients that are found within plants, fruits, vegetables, lots of the dark leafy greens, the superfoods, the antioxidants, berries, not just berries, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and the offshoots of the dark leafy greens, not just the spinach and the kale. Everyone has spinach and kale nowadays, but things like arugula and the endive and just random microgreens,
Yeah.
things of that nature. Eating a rainbow.
Yeah, I have heard of that.
I think many people in the States are very tired of hearing eat your rainbow, but it's true. If you have a day and you take your 24-hour period and however you eat that, whether you're eating an 8-hour window, 10-hour window, 12, 14, it doesn't matter. Make sure you get foods from within each one of the colors. There's 7 colors in a rainbow. Eating all of those foods guarantees that your entire body is functioning at optimal capacity.
Yeah. And how do we go about doing that? Because I know people have different restrictions like budget, their ability to cook, like resources, time.
What I do is I actually buy a lot of frozen foods. And it sounds funky because you're thinking, well, you get fresh food. When you're buying fresh, you want to stick with seasonal. And right now we're in fall, so we get a lot of squashes. Well, 90% of squashes around here are orange. That doesn't really fit a whole rainbow.
Yeah.
But when you do things like buy dried cranberries in bulk, or locally where it's a little bit cheaper, so it's a little bit more budget friendly, and you can buy your fruits and your vegetables frozen or locally, you can hit that rainbow without busting a budget. Not only that, a lot of the dark leafy greens can be regrown in windows. So you buy them once and you can continue to repopulate them for up to 3 months. Some of them up to 6 months. I haven't gotten 6 months though. I don't know how other people do that, but they have gone 6 months, full nutrition. You can see within the food, the darker the color, the brighter the color, the deeper the color, the more nutrients and the quality of the nutrients are higher. So when you're looking at budget constraints, you want to buy seasonally. And when you can't find it seasonally, go with frozen foods to fill the bill. The frozen foods are frozen, they're flash frozen. And what that means, or typically flash frozen. What that means is all of the nutrients are instantly preserved. So as long as there's nothing funky on the ingredient list, you've got the whole foods that may have been frozen in July. Like blueberries, their season is summer. They could have been frozen in July to be sold in December. And now you've got purple and indigo.
Oh, okay.
So everyone thinks you have to have one food for every color. But there are foods that can actually take up multiple.
Yeah. And actually that's really interesting. I guess if you think about like a rainbow, there obviously is only one of each color, and that instinctively you would be like, okay, I just need one of each and then I'm like done. But I feel like that's a really good way of thinking about things.
Yeah. I mean, peppers, bell peppers, they go from orange, yellow, red, green. They're all a green pepper.
Yeah.
They're just a different color. It's just a stage of the growing process.
Yeah. That's a really interesting way to think about it as well. And you can eat the same food, but just in different colors.
Yes. Yes.
That's a little hack, I feel like, a little tip and trick.
Yeah. And
And
if you rotate, you end up with leftovers. And all those leftovers can typically be combined either into a smoothie, into a soup, into a stir fry, something easy, quick, and full of nutrition.
yeah, and for people sort of starting out, they've never really done the whole nutrition thing. They've never really looked out for like what they're eating. What's the best way to approach this? What's like a good first step?
A good first step is half a cup of vegetables with every meal.
Okay.
And a piece of fruit with snacks, if you eat them. Some people just starting out don't eat snacks yet. And some people don't eat snacks ever, which is perfectly fine. And in that case, you would go with either half a cup of vegetables or a piece of fruit or half a cup of fruit. If you're going to go with a half a cup of vegetables, especially first starting, buy the mixes. The vegetables that are already mixed, you've got several vegetables in there. The one coming off the top of my head, and I don't eat corn, but it's one of the more popular ones that come out there is it's got peas and corn and green beans and carrots. And right there, you've got 5 of your colors. So all you really need is a handful of berries or half an apple.
Yeah. And I feel like veggies are like the best place to get that. There are so many options, and I know like a lot of people don't really like vegetables and stuff, but I feel like there's always alternatives. Like if you don't like veggies, there's fruits that come in all different colors as well.
I have toddlers, and one of the things that they tell you about toddlers, because mine have hit an age where, surprise, surprise, all of a sudden everything is yucky. But they still need vitamin D, they still need magnesium, vitamin C, they still need their iron, they need all the other nutrients as well to keep their stress levels managed, to keep their gut healthy, and to keep their immune system turned on and fed well. You can get those same micronutrients in fruit as you can with vegetables. And the more consistent and the longer you are consistent that you're eating these fruits and vegetables, even just half a cup with each one of your meals, over time, your brain chemistry starts to shift. And the communication pathway between your gut and your brain now starts asking for more fruits and vegetables. Even if you have not been eating fruits or vegetables, if you're only eating fruits and no vegetables, and you start consistently eating those at 2 to 3 meals a day, over time, your body's going to start wanting more of that. It doesn't have to work as hard to get nutrients out of that as it does out of processed foods and refined foods. It wants to go with what's easy.
Yeah. And speaking of like those processed foods and those refined foods, obviously we all love to have a little cheat snack, or we all love, things that are considered unhealthy. So how do we go about incorporating that into our diet as well?
The unhealthy, just don't do it all the time.
Mm.
And I know it sounds, every time I say that, I get that same look of, are you kidding? But it's simple. And if it's something that you're indulging in often, if you're eating sweets all the time and you have a sugar craving that never goes away, incorporate frozen fruits into your diet and literally eat them frozen. Frozen grapes and frozen berries are optimal. Pineapple, the very sweet fruits. What that does is your brain craving sweet, it just wants the glucose. It's missing something. So it's coming across as this comfort food. It wants the sweet, or it wants, the mashed potatoes. And typically with the sweet, that 9 times out of 10 is what I'm hearing, is that craving for sweet. When you're eating the frozen foods, you can't just chew frozen foods. You have to actually suck on it. So the glucose and the nutrients within those frozen fruits slowly drifts into your system, satisfies the craving, but now you've eaten something healthy versus something unhealthy. So if it's a habit where you're treating yourself often, and often meaning every single night, so about 2 to 3 times a week, having a little treat is really not that big of a deal.
Okay. Yeah. And like frozen fruit, it's easily accessible. Open up a pack and you've got it there. You don't have to like prepare it, which is good.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah. And it's delicious if you love fruit,
Absolutely.
that is. Yeah. And what are some of the tangible benefits? For example, we've implemented some of these little strategies that you've mentioned. What are the benefits we should be seeing from, eating and, living with a more stress-busting nutrition?
The brain fog goes away. That struggle to get out of bed, not really wanting to get to work, to go anywhere, to do anything beyond crawl your way to the coffee pot, that actually diminishes. Now you're getting out of bed, and you may not hop out of bed. I'm not a morning person. I never hop out of bed. But when you're eating more of a stress-busting nutrient diet, the whole foods, your body's getting what it needs, which means you're going to sleep better. That also means you're going to wake up feeling more rested. You're going to feel like you can take on the day no matter what is happening. And you don't feel like you're starting out the day on less than empty. You're not starting out on fumes. You're starting out without even having breakfast or anything in your system. You're actually just starting out like you could move about your day with ease, with intention, and not drag throughout the day. There's no 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. slump. That takes care of itself as well. That 3 p.m. slump, that afternoon slump everyone talks about, it's a drop in your blood sugar. And it's when you've worked for so long that now your productivity is bottom of the barrel and your body needs to be replenished and rejuvenated.
Yeah. And I think with that whole sort of afternoon slump, I feel like I get that too sometimes. And I'm like, oh, it's normal. It's just something everyone gets. I can't fix this. It's just what it is. But just knowing that like your nutrition and making intentional choices with what you eat can really help that. Like it's so simple, I guess, in theory, but also I guess implementing all of that is the challenge.
That is a challenge. A lot of people try and implement everything all at once. And in reality, if you only do 1 or 2 things, if you're not drinking enough water, start drinking more water. Slowly increase it, because if you increase it overnight, you're going to hit the bathroom like a racehorse for a good week or so before your body catches up. And there's nothing wrong with starting slow and steady.
Yeah.
That's how I work with every one of my clients, because when you're fighting autoimmune and chronic illnesses, it's painful to go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
You can't go fast. You have to go slow. And for those of us that don't struggle with those, it's not as impactful to go from 0 to 1,000. We can go fully unprocessed to fully healthy. Our body still needs time to catch up. So doing things slow and steady, there's nothing wrong with that. 1 or 2 practices a day for a good week or so, and then start adding on to it.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm very much the type of person who's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it from like 0 to 100. And I will literally implement all the different strategies you've just said. Suddenly I'll be eating all the colors of the rainbow. I'll be eating the frozen fruit. I'll be only having occasional like little cheat meals or snacks. And then that'll probably last me like a week before I realize it's not sustainable. And then I'm like, okay, well, that failed.
That's really the key, is finding something that's sustainable for you.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times following the process that you're talking about, where you're going 0 to 1,000 and it's such a dramatic shift, it is the first trigger for our brain to feel deprived.
Yeah.
If you don't ever give your brain an option to feel deprived, if you're always feeding it something that is creating a happier internal structure, so your mood improves when you eat. And this is how you can tell when you're super stressed and you're not eating well, is you're stressed and you're grumpy. If
Yeah.
you're stressed and you're grumpy, then it's time to eat some healthier foods so that you can bring that right back. That whole hangry thing, it's not just about not eating at all. It also applies to eating the wrong foods for what your body actually needs in that moment in time.
Yeah. And I guess sometimes it is hard in those moments where, for example, you're walking past a bakery and you see all these delicious things and you're like, oh, that's really good. I feel like sometimes it's hard to step back and be like, okay, this is my brain craving something sweet, but can I find a better option? We're just so quick to be like, okay, I see that, I want that, I'm going to buy it. Even though it's unhealthy, my brain wants it, so I'll give it to it.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens.
Yeah.
That happens.
So in those moments, what's something we can tell ourselves, or what's something that can help in those moments where we feel like we need that unhealthy thing, but maybe we can substitute it with something else?
I always have people ask questions, because what if that's a bakery that you walk past and you have never been past before? You're on a vacation or it's new to town and it is a treat for you. The 2 questions I always have everyone ask is, when was the last time I indulged in something where my brain said, oh, that looks good, and I just went for it? When was the last time I did that? If it's been at least a week, go buy the treat. And then 2 is to look at what else you've had throughout the day. So one of the things that is not really as well known, but I feel like it should be, is when your body has any sort of processed food, even if it's 1 or 2 bites, not healthy processed, but unhealthy, the refined foods, the modified foods, it shuts off your body's ability to digest properly. And it shuts off your immune system. So anything that you eat after that, you're not able to absorb the micronutrients. You can eat as healthy as you want after that, but your body's going to struggle to get anything. So you want to look at what else you've had for the day. And if you've had an amazing day and this treat that you're going to buy is from a fancy bakery, and like I said, you never have treats anymore. You haven't had one in over a week. And don't lie to yourself. Our brains like to lie to us. Be realistic. But if you haven't had one in over a week, indulge it.
Yeah.
And those are the 2 questions. I will never ask you, well, what did you eat just, 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago? You need to look at what you've eaten for the last 24 hours. So if it's noon, what have you eaten since noon the day before?
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I feel like I like how there's 2 questions and it's not this whole complicated process, which makes it even more challenging to make the right decision.
If you get past 3 questions or 3 things, your brain is now shut off. It only is going to remember 3 things. So there was this fad a while, I think it was well over 10 years ago, where we were supposed to write down 5 goals every single day and do these 5 things every single day. The problem with that is whatever your 5 goals are, your brain's only remembering the last 3.
Yeah.
It's digestible. It's easy to remember.
Yeah. And so right now we're talking a lot about the short term and like things we can do right now and like the benefits we'll see. But in terms of, like the long term, what kind of benefits will we see for like our cognitive function and how we present ourselves in the workplace and our productivity?
The longer you eat healthier, the healthier your brain cells are, the healthier the function of your body is. So everything starts to become easier and easier over time. And the neural degeneration that typically would happen over years as we age, that risk, aside from genetic factors, that risk actually minimizes, it reduces. So you're able to have cognitive function throughout your later years. You treat your body well, you treat your internal structure well, and feed yourself well so that you're managing things that could negatively impact you, like your stress levels. Not only is it going to, over time, gradually continue to improve your productivity, you're also going to have better retention, better memory function, long-term and short-term. And for many of us, you get into projects, and I used to work with a government contractor, and their projects, they're thick documents. And if you forget one tiny little snippet detail, it's going to impact the entire project. Nowadays, a lot of jobs reflect that level of stress. And if you can maintain and find a way to be diligent about this, to look at feeding yourself well, managing your stress levels well, as more upkeep and management for you, then what will happen is over time, you actually become better at your job. You're more efficient. There's no late nights because now you're not dragging things out. It's not taking you as long to get finished or to work through projects as it used to.
Yeah.
Your ability to not just retain, but understand what is being read and what is being said improves.
Yeah, so it's like a gradual sort of exponential change that you see within yourself, and I guess it reflects in the things that you do outside of, yourself, like work and like your relationships and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it may not even be anything that you necessarily recognize until something major happens.
Yeah.
I think the big thing is the ability to work your brain. You're training your brain, just like your body, you have to. And when your cognitive function improves because of what you're feeding it, because of how you've decided to implement your daily practices, that actually over time improves the longevity of your ability to work and to make money. I was going to say, nobody wants to work till like they're 100, 110, but in reality, it gives you the ability to work until however long you want to.
Yeah. And I guess you want to be using your time wisely, and you don't want to just be like dragging through everything you're doing because you have to do it, or like have that mentality of like, I'm only here because I have to be here. Instead, you want to be able to say that you are here because you want to be here and you're doing all the things you can do, for example, stress boosting nutrition to, be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for chatting about that. I feel like we just had a really great talk about some different strategies. I personally learned some things as well that we can use. But now I'd like to switch over to our practices and habits debrief section. So here we're just going to talk about some practices that you use personally. So is there a practice that you use to, optimize your own nutrition?
Absolutely. I have 3.5-year-old twins. So if we do not use daily practices that have become instinctive, we lose our brains. And I say we, it's me and my husband, and we don't have family close. So it's just us and toddlers. One of the things that I do is every single morning, the very first thing in my mouth is water, lemon water, herbal tea. It is never coffee. Coffee comes with food.
Interesting.
when coffee hits your system and there's nothing in it, it's like a rock hitting your stomach. The warmth feels good. It's a habit that a lot of people have that will help them wake up their body, but it's an artificial awakening. And what you're doing by drinking the water, by drinking lemon water, herbal tea, things of that nature, is you're waking up your system. The warm water will actually spark your lymphatic system. It'll wake that up and get things really flowing without needing that hit of caffeine. When you have that with food, it no longer becomes this extreme stimulant that is followed by a drastic drop, leading you to want more coffee. It's now something that's more sustainable. So 1 cup of coffee will last you several hours versus a cup of coffee and 15 minutes later, you need another one.
Yeah.
So that's one of my key things. And no matter what, I have alarms on my phone now, about once every 4 to 5 hours, asking me if I've eaten anything.
Oh, okay.
And the biggest reason why is because I will get into my day and I will totally forget that I have to eat.
Yeah.
I'm only focused on the next task. And especially when you have distractions all day.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
love my distractions to death, but when you're trying to get something done and then there's a little creature that comes up and is distracting you, it's very similar to working in a very high stress corporate setting where everybody's in cubicles. There's always distractions. So I have reminders in my phone because I don't want to have to think about it. Like I said, our brains lie to us. My brain loves to lie to me and tell me that we ate a couple hours ago. When in reality, a couple of hours was at 9 o'clock in the morning and it's now 7 p.m. So I have to set reminders for myself. And between those two things, they really keep me on track. And at the end of every night, I make sure to do some sort of stress relieving activity. I'm always active, but I'm hyperactive to begin with. So that's not really a challenge for me. If I don't have a dedicated activity, I'll do some yoga, I'll breathe. I have something that I walk around with called a sanity journal. And basically all it is, it's literally a notebook like this. It's not anything fancy. If my brain is talking to me, those thoughts that get you rolling through your head and you're just thinking and they won't shut up, I grab the sanity journal and I write everything down.
Yeah. I feel like that's a really good strategy. Like bringing in journaling, it's underrated, but I feel like it does help a lot when you have all these thoughts, you really want to get them out and you don't really have the perfect outlet, but you can just write them down.
Yes, it gets them out of your head.
Yeah.
If it's out of your head, you're not thinking about it. And 9 times out of 10, the thoughts in my head are my to-do list for the next day.
Yeah. Exactly. And back to like your points about, the coffee and like the reminders, I feel like that's a really interesting one with coffee because personally I don't drink it, but I've always associated it to that first thing that people do when they wake up. And I always thought that was right because sometimes I get people being like to me, Joanna, you just need some coffee first thing in the morning. I'm like, I don't really like the taste of it, but I guess like it's something I should consider. Like it seems to be working for everyone else. But hearing that's actually really interesting.
Yeah, that's actually how I started drinking coffee. I became a trainer and had to be at work at 4 o'clock in the morning. And we were training the ladies at the local coffee shop in exchange for coffee. So we would show up and the coffee was there. And back then, I didn't realize the negative implications of having coffee first thing. So I would just go straight into work, and that was my breakfast.
Yeah.
Not exactly the healthiest breakfast for a trainer, but that was my breakfast. And that was a lot of breakfast of champions for a lot of people.
Yeah. Really interesting, actually. I never thought of coffee as like the first thing in the morning being a bad thing. Like I feel like because of how society views coffee as like this thing that's just like really good for like your energy and just getting you ready for the day, you never really consider the side effects or anything that's bad about it. Yeah.
You don't. And, to be really fair, if you're not having issues, if your stress level feels managed, you feel balanced, you feel like it's sustainable, having a cup of coffee in the morning is not a big deal before food, before any of that. But for people who are struggling with any sort of chronic illness or dysfunction within the body, it can really throw you for a curveball, especially if you think things are sustainable and then you walk into work at 9 o'clock and the whole world's blown up,
Yeah.
which happens.
Yeah. And the reminders you set on your phone to remind yourself to eat, and the whole thing about like, oh, it's been a couple hours. I use that a lot. Like because I'm notorious for forgetting to eat unless I'm in like an environment where I have to take a break. Like for example at work, and I naturally get a break. But like other than that, someone might ask me, so when was the last time you ate? And I'll be like, oh, a couple hours ago. When in reality, a couple hours means several hours, and I've just like lost track of time.
I am infamous for that. And there's a saying around that you want to make sure I've eaten in the last 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because I become very grumpy. I
Yeah.
get hungry so quick. And a lot of us do, especially when you eat a healthier diet and when you're just healthier in general. All those practices in place, your body is used to your maintenance doses is what I call them.
Yeah.
And if you haven't had your maintenance dose in a couple of hours, your body's going to know, and it's not going to be very happy with you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can get very hangry very quickly. And then I'll be in that moment and I'll be like, okay, I need some food. That's what I need.
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing. And how have you felt that, implementing this practice has increased your productivity?
That's actually an easy one to answer. So I had the boys over 2020, and I lost my job in March when everything shut down. And I stopped a lot of my practices because I felt like I was only doing them because of work, and I'd stopped them for a couple of months. In the first few months after a baby is born, you are just surviving. When we came out of that, it was a reminder of why I do those things. I felt sluggish. I felt like my brain wanted me to move faster than my body was able to, despite the fact that I work out all the time. And, my diet really didn't change very much. It's been the same way for 20 years, so it really hasn't changed that much. But not making sure that I was eating regularly, not making sure that I was eating my rainbow, that I was getting my water in, the things that had become second nature up to the point that everything shut down and my brain effectively shut everything down, even health-wise. They become so instinctive that I have forgotten their usefulness and why those things are put into place. And I put those things into place many, many, many years ago, because without them, I do exactly what I did in 2020, and I lose myself into them. And when I initially lost 100 pounds, it's a challenge you don't ever want to do again. You don't ever want to go back to that place because you remember that negativity, and it feels like a completely different life.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it was a glimpse into what could have been, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely does.
You just feel so very unhealthy, and the dragging out of bed is, when you haven't done it in a while, when you're used to just getting up and moving slow and steady. I promise I don't hop out of bed like the Easter Energizer Bunny or anything like that. But when you're used to getting up and not feeling like you have the weight of the world on you, or you're trying to lift up 100 pounds, 200 pounds as you're just trying to roll out of bed, it's eye-opening when all of a sudden you start waking up like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like that's the ultimate goal for everyone, I guess, to feel that way and start your day off right, because it can really like shape how the rest of your day pans out.
Absolutely. And if it's not something that you've had, there's so many people in our world who don't know what that's like. So they don't have the idea that this is even possible.
Yeah.
It's, once you have that idea and once it's cemented into your brain, then it's very easy to stop it the way that I was able to.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess if we're talking about challenges with these types of practices, would you say that a challenge is making this into a habit and making this something that you can maintain?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always talk to my clients and I use the words daily practice. We don't talk about habits.
Okay.
We implement daily practices. Once you implement daily practices, you're doing that slow and steady over many weeks time. Those practices become habits. And then the habits become something that your brain is now just instinctively, this is just what happens. It's like when you play an instrument. If you're going to go and play with the Philharmonica, you have to practice a lot. You have to be dedicated to practicing your instrument as often as you possibly can. And when you're
Yeah.
trying to transition your health and your health and you're trying to improve productivity, minimize stress as much as absolutely possible, to improve your performance, to improve your ability to work well, work smarter, not harder, then it's important to remember that you have to practice. A lot of times these daily practices, they're new. They're not things that you would have done before. The whole eating half a cup of vegetables with every meal. A lot of people listening, they haven't done that yet. You have to practice that for a while and then it becomes a habit.
Yeah. And sometimes I guess these things, like these strategies we've talked about, might seem too simple, like just 1 cup of vegetables a day, or try some frozen fruit instead of, what you would normally lean for. It seems almost too simple that I feel like sometimes it might deter people. It might make them think, oh, I need something more challenging. But when they reach for that more challenging sort of strategy, they're not able to really implement it.
Yes. And what you're trying to do by keeping it that simple is you're trying to trigger your brain. You're trying to get your subconscious to help your conscious.
Mm.
So rather than just you consciously working and dedicating your life to trying to get healthier and, giving up or not even trying because it seems so simplistic. It seems so, and it's just way too easy. It can't be that easy. That, like you said, you reach the harder points. And if you haven't taken those early steps, then now it feels like instead of just walking on the beach, gradual incline, you're now climbing a cliff.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I guess simpler doesn't need to be considered something bad.
Now, this
Yeah.
world we need to shift that around.
Yeah.
I'm famous for trying to make things harder on myself. And in
Yeah.
reality, it's okay if things are easy. It is okay if things are simple. It
Yeah.
actually makes the rest of life a little bit easier.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I'm exactly the same. I feel like if I'm not doing something hard and challenging, then it's not working. And I feel like if I'm doing something simple and I'm doing it well, then I'm like, okay, this does not seem right. I need to make it more challenging, or I need to make this hard for myself, which is so like horrible to think that we do that to ourselves. But I guess it's just how we're wired these days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear that so often. And the biggest thing is if you're trying the simple things and after a week you feel like you need to be challenged, add something else in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Each week, add something new in.
Yeah. That's perfect. I feel like that's such a good way to approach this. Like, if you're able to do the simple things and maintain it, then I guess that's your indicator that you can level up a bit and try something a bit more challenging.
Absolutely. That's the true indicator. If you're doing something and it starts to feel repetitive, like it's monotonous, now it's becoming instinctive. Now you
Yeah.
need something else.
Yeah. Great. Well, I'm so glad that we've been able to unearth this a bit more and talk about practices and talk about some challenges, like common challenges that people face as well. We never really talk about the challenges as much, and we're always just like, do this, do this, do this, without acknowledging that it can be hard to do all this. So thank you for having that talk with me.
You're welcome.
Great. Well, this brings us to our last little bit for today, which is our open mic. So the floor is all yours. You can talk about anything that you would like to. So yeah.
All right. Well, this is basically how I work. I'm a little bit different. I've been through a number of different situations, which would take way too much time here, but I am an open book. I answer questions about the journeys I've taken, the challenges I've faced in my own health and my life. And I don't have any qualms about sharing that with people because I know there are others who shared that with me. And this journey led me to doing what I do. Everything that I do starts slow and steady, mostly because you have to manage your health for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
We don't get out of this. This isn't a, you have a 6-week challenge and then you're done for the rest of your life. You have to do this. It's kind of like eating or drinking. You don't get out of it ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So learning to be more effective and more efficient in what you're feeding your body and how you're treating your body, how you're managing your stress. It's a great way to fall into happy, healthy, living your life wild, free, and healthy. And it's a total play off my last name, but beyond that, I love the idea of a bunch of us living in this world, wild, free, healthy, happy, because I think that is really the way that we can reach a lot more peace and serenity in our world. We got to start inside and work our way out.
Yeah.
And if anybody hears anything here that sparks your attention, you have questions, or you just want to chat about anything, feel free to DM me and we'll schedule some time and have a little chat.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you so much for that. And I guess for people wanting to reach out, they've got some questions, they've picked out something from today's episode that they want to talk about, where can they go and find you?
I am at Wild Free Health all over the place. And the website is wildfreehealth.com.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. And for everyone listening, don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't worry if you missed that. We've got all of Bonni's details down in the description below. But thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. You have been listening to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website, pp.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Joanna. Thanks for tuning in.